So I needed to get the steering shaft out of this Mustang GT because the other one was cut in half on the other Mustang GT project car. And so you can see there are two nuts there that hold it in place. It comes out pretty simple actually, and this will be easier because the engine's out of the car. And then there's a bolt right here, and that bolt comes out and it will help telescope and get it down away from the steering wheel. So I came in and I got those two nuts off, and then as soon as those were out of the way, I went up and got this last bolt out, and you can see how it telescopes out, and now it's loose and ready to come out through the firewall. So luckily the engine's not in this car. It's a lot easier to get to in this case. But I've done this before. When you do headers and stuff, a lot of times you'll take the steering shaft and loosen it. There's the bolt on this side, and it just pulls out and telescopes as well, and then the whole assembly just comes out forward, and it would drop out probably out the front of the car or out the bottom that way. But next I was taking the fender off the car because I need to get the main harness out of this car. The fuse box for the engine bay, and it goes over in front of the radiator. We'll see the whole thing, but the whole fuse box needed to come out. I needed the whole harness for this car. And so you take out the bolts that go in the fender. There's two of them that are in the door jamb that hold the back side of the fender in place, and you can see how carefully I pulled those out without dropping them down in there. I just dropped them into the carpet there. And then the header cowl, even though this one's smashed, it still has a couple bolts here on the front of it. This is the headlight housing, basically what the headlights live inside. So take out those two bolts, and then there's a little Phillips screw that holds the spat, which is the side skirt front piece, on. And the spat is also held on with some pieces down below, some clips, some push pins. But basically I pulled that straight out and off. You can see now pulling down this splash guard, there are two more bolts here. So this is how you can remove the entire fender. You have to get to those two. So if you're trying to get the fender off, you do have to take the front of the side skirts off. And so with those bolts out of the way and the shims that fell out of it, we can now remove this fender. So this was a GT Sonic Blue, so it's too bad to see it in this shape, but fender lifts right off and comes out, and that was pretty simple. So that's how you get the fender off. Next, I'm coming in here to get this main harness, and it's held on by a bolt, and then there's a couple other things that branch off of it here. We'll go through all these things as we take them off. It comes here to the main harness that goes to the fuse box, and then it goes the other direction, and it follows in front of the radiator, and it goes to the other side where it plugs into a couple things. So to get the fuse box out of the way, you take a screwdriver and you pry the tabs away from it, and you can lift the whole fuse box out as soon as these tabs are depressed. So you see, you push them like this to get them away on each side, and there's one on this side as well. Just pry those tabs away from the fuse box and it lifts right out. And so now coming over here to this side, the ABS harness comes out like this. You know, you pull that plug out, and that disconnects it pretty well. And there's other things to disconnect too on that side, and here you just follow it along, and it does have a couple plastic push pins that hold it in place, and I was trying to get those out, but it just broke right off, so no big deal. And you can zip tie that in or do other things. Now there's a couple grounds. This is a ground, they have the green bolts on them, and so both sides, the driver's side here has two of them, and you take those out, and that's part of the harness there that's connected, so it's all run together. And so there's a couple of circular plugs here. I know one's a ground for the ECU, and you know, there's a couple circle plugs that need to come apart here. And then of course the harness also goes through and connects to the washer jar. the windshield washer fluid container here. And I've had to replace one of these before because somebody converted it into a methanol injection kit. But then you take a bolt to get the main harness out of here, and just unbolting it gets it off. You don't have to pull on any clips or anything. It looked that way, but it just unbolts and the whole harness comes out like that. So very nice. And then there's a couple plugs here on the side, probably to the washer fluid jar, I think, and ABS, and the power, the brake lines and things. But anyway, these just unplug. You just have to pull on them and pull them apart like this. You depress the pin on each of those, and then they're held in with those little Christmas tree push pins, and I try to pull them straight out and get them out. Sometimes they just stay in there and then the harness comes free from them, but sometimes they're hard to get to, and so I just pull them right out. But then there's the electrical for, I believe, the fog lights and headlights and the horn here. So I'll do a close-up on the horn as well, but just getting all this harness out of the way. But it's all connected, it's all one piece, and it's going to come through the side of the fender there in that big opening. So no, the fuse box doesn't come through there. You pull the harness through the other way. So here's how the horns just kind of slide off of those little pegs, and then the harness comes right through. So you just work it through. Be careful not to break anything or cut anything, because it is kind of sharp metal, but I mean, it's not too bad. But anyway, so pulled the whole harness through, and there was one more connector, and then that was it. So that's just unplug that, and now the whole harness is free. And so that got that all the way out without cutting anything or ruining anything. And so I was happy to get this, because the other car I bought, the kid had cut all the harness is to get the engine stuff out. So next I'm going after the hood latch assembly, and this is actually pretty neat. This is how it all comes together on the back side. There's a little Phillips screw right here that the cable is anchored to the latch system with, and so you unscrew it and slide it off of that little post. You can see right there where my thumb is, and then you just unwrap the cable around this twisty metal piece that hangs down, that holds the cable in place. So that's how you unwrap it, and it's also anchored at the bottom with, basically, this is a metal brace, so when you slam the hood, it holds everything together, and it keeps the latch sturdy. So that just comes out with one bolt, and I did the other bolts on top to get that whole latch assembly out. And there's a J-clip in there too, that I like to keep those J-clips. They are very useful. So now the cable comes through this opening here as you pull it through the headlight area. Now this car was in an accident, so it's a little tighter in there, but the cable does come through here pretty easily, and you follow it over here. It goes behind these wires here. There's like a little loop in the wiring for it to go down through like that, and then it comes down underneath the dash. It goes through the firewall and stuff. So there's one bolt that holds the latch piece on, and then up behind it there is another push pin. So it's anchored right here with this round Christmas tree right there push pin, and so that and the bolt hold it anchored. And so I just grabbed it with both hands and pulled it straight out, and then I'm just fishing this cable through. I needed this hood latch cable because on the other car I have, the accident sheared it off. So here's a grommet. This is the end of the cable coming through kind of the firewall area. Just push that grommet through and push the end of the cable through, and then you're able to just grab on and pull this whole assembly out. And so that's how you get the hood latch out, and it's all one nice piece with a grommet on it. So next I had to cut the carpet back a little bit because the person who had taken the seats out of my other GT had just cut the harness and let the seat come out that way. They didn't unplug the seat, which is really easy. It's one plug. So I cut the carpet back a little bit so that I could cut this harness farther back, so I'll have room to work with it to splice these wires into the harness that's still in the car. And I wanted to leave enough room in this car that you could splice another one of these in if somebody was interested in the whole harness that runs underneath the carpet there, so that I didn't ruin it, and it's still able to be used if somebody wanted to do that and then get this piece out of a wrecking yard or something later down the road. So you never know what you're going to need. So basically those are all the nice parts I got off of this car: the seat harness, the steering shaft, the hood latch, and the main harness with the fuse box and everything. So there's a lot of parts here I needed for my project Mustang GTs. Obviously this car is wrecked really bad on the front and in the back if you've seen the other videos, so it's really too bad that this car probably won't be fixed, but it's a good parts car and I did need all these parts. And so that's the update for the zinc yellow GT, and probably a little bit for the silver GT, I guess, in that case as well. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more Mustang content.